Captain Han stood on the main deck of the exploration vessel, Aurora Lance, watching the stars drift by like slow sparks in the dark. The ship had been on a long survey mission through the Rim sector, a place known for quiet space and strange signals. Han had expected another calm day, but things changed the moment the distress call came in. It was a repeating signal, weak and broken, coming from a system not far from their route. The pattern did not match any known human code. It also did not match any alien message in the ship's database. It was simply a soft pulse, like a heartbeat fading away. Han ordered the ship to change course. When the Aurora Lance arrived in the system, they found a small alien vessel drifting near a dead moon. The ship looked damaged, its hull marked by burn scars and deep cuts. There was no movement, no lights, no sign of life. The crew scanned it again and again, but the results were the same: no engines, no shields, just faint life support, barely holding on. Han prepared an away team. He brought 2 engineers, a medic, and Axenolinguist-G-A- had joined the Aurora Lance only 3 months earlier. She rarely spoke unless needed, but she understood more alien languages than anyone Han had ever met. She was small, calm, and always focused. Han respected her skill, even if she kept to herself. The team boarded the damaged alien ship. The inside was cold and dim, and strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. Jia moved quietly beside Han, recording everything. They found 3 alien envoys alive, but unconscious in the central chamber. Their skin was pale silver, and their eyes were large and clouded. They were roughly humanoid, but their faces held a delicate look, as if carved by careful hands. The medic checked them. "They're alive, Captain. Weak, dehydrated, but alive." Han nodded. "Let's get them to the Aurora Lance. Jia, can you prepare a greeting message? Something simple, something safe." Jia nodded and began working on her tablet. When the aliens regained consciousness a few hours later, the ship's medical bay became tense. The aliens were confused, frightened, and disoriented. Their language was soft and musical, like wind chimes moving in a slow breeze. Jia stepped forward, calm as ever. She translated their first question. "Who saved us?" Han stepped closer. "We did. You sent a distress call. We came to help." Jia translated his words. The aliens listened, then nodded slowly. One of them, who seemed like their leader, spoke again. Jia listened carefully. "They say their ship was attacked," she said. "They were on a diplomatic mission. They didn't expect anyone here." Han was about to respond when one of the aliens suddenly stood up, frightened by a beeping machine. Han raised his hands. "Easy, sweetheart," he said without thinking. Trying to calm the moment, the alien stopped, but Jia froze. Her face turned red so quickly, Han almost missed it. She stared at him, wide-eyed, like someone had just whispered a secret in her ear. Han blinked. "Jia, everything all right?" She cleared her throat softly. I am fine. Please continue." But her cheeks stayed pink. Han wondered if he had said something wrong. It had been a simple word, something he often used with nervous crew members. He did not expect it to affect her. The aliens slowly calmed down, thanks to Jia's gentle explanations. The medical staff finished checking them, and the leader finally spoke again. "He says they want to explain the danger," Jia said. Her voice was steady again, but the blush had not fully faded. They moved to the briefing room so everyone could hear. The alien leader, still weak but determined, stood at the center of the room. He spoke again, his voice thin. Jia translated. Their ship was attacked by an unknown force. They hid in this system after their engines failed. They thought the enemy might follow them. Han frowned. "What kind of enemy?" The alien answered. Jia paused, listening, then said, "He says the attackers were not one of the known species. They moved without sound, without signals. They used strange weapons that cut through their shields like paper." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. "Did you record their transmissions?" Han asked. The alien nodded weakly. Han turned to Jie. "Can you decode it?" "I will try," she said. While the engineers worked on recovering the alien data core, Jia sat in a small analysis room, studying the broken fragments of the enemy transmissions. She played the samples again and again. Strange patterns, sharp bursts, hidden tones. Nothing matched any known language or code. Han entered the room quietly. "How's it going?" he asked. Jia looked up, a little startled. "It is difficult, but not impossible." Han leaned over her workstation. Their shoulders were close, and she tried not to react, but Han did not miss the way she tensed. He smiled lightly. "You're doing great." Jia swallowed and nodded. "Thank you." She focused on the screen again. "The signals are layered, almost like someone tried to hide meaning under noise." "Can you pull it apart?" Han asked. She thought for a moment. "Yes, but it will take time." Han nodded. "Take all the time you need. The aliens are safe for now, and we're not going anywhere until we learn what attacked them." Before he left, Han turned back. "And for the record, sorry if I said something earlier that made you uncomfortable." Jia froze again. Uncomfortable? "You know," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "when I called you sweetheart, you looked surprised." Jia's face flushed again, even deeper this time. It was unexpected." "That is all," she said quickly. "You may forget it." Han raised an eyebrow, but did not push further. "All right. Just checking." He walked out. When the door closed, Jia covered her face with both hands and whispered to herself, "Why did that affect me so much?" She shook her head and returned to the transmissions. Hours later, she called Han to the room again. Her voice was sharper now, focused. "I found something," she said. Han leaned over her shoulder again, but this time she did not tense as much. "The signal is not just noise. It is a warning." "A warning?" Han repeated. "Yes, it says, 'We are coming.'" A cold silence filled the room. Han exhaled slowly. "So the enemy knew the aliens were here." Jia nodded. "Yes, and they might still be searching." Han looked at the decoded message, then at Jia. "You did good, Jia." She blinked. "Thank you. And, sweetheart," he added with a small grin. Jia immediately turned red again. "Captain," she said, half whisper, half protest. Han laughed softly. "Relax, I'm only teasing." But her reaction stayed warm in his mind, and he could not stop thinking about Wyatt. Mattered. The warning message continued to flash on the screen, unnoticed for a moment, as the ship drifted silently through the stars, unaware that the enemy might already be closer than anyone expected. The warning message stayed on the screen long after Han left the analysis room. Jia kept staring at it, the strange symbols and sharp tones repeating in her head. The enemy who attacked the alien ship had not only sent a message, they had sent a promise. They were coming, and no one knew when. The next morning's cycle on the Aurora Lance began with alarms. Not attack alarms, but system alerts. The ship's sensors detected faint traces of unknown energy signatures scattered through the nearby region. They were small and scattered, but they were there like footprints left behind by something moving through space. Han ordered a full scan of the system. The crew moved quickly. Engineers checked shield reserves. Weapons teams ran diagnostics twice. Even the medical staff stayed on alert. Jia walked into the bridge with her tablet, her expression serious. Han noticed right away. "Anything new?" he asked, Yes, she said. I analyzed more of the hidden signals. They are not only warnings. Some of them are tracking pulses. The enemy might use them to search for survivors. Han's jaw tightened. So they might be looking for the alien team we rescued. Gia nodded. Yes, and they might detect us too if we stay still. Han tapped a command panel. Navigation. Prepare a low-energy drift. We'll move without engines to avoid detection. The ship shifted gently, almost like it was floating on invisible water. The main screens dimmed to minimum brightness. The crew spoke softly, as if the enemy might hear them through space. The alien envoys rested in a quiet medical bay room. Their leader, still weak, looked at Han when he visited. Chia stood beside him to translate. He wants to know if you found anything new, she said. Han nodded. We think the attackers might still be close. We're moving carefully. We won't let them find you. Gia translated, and the alien leader's clouded eyes softened. He spoke again. He says their people feared this would happen. They feared the enemy would follow them anywhere. Gia said. Han looked at the alien for a long moment. We'll protect you, but we need to know more. Anything you remember could help. The alien nodded weakly. Then he pointed to the small device near his chest. Gia leaned closer to listen. He says this is a memory crystal. It holds images of the attackers. But it was damaged in the fight. It may be hard to recover, she said. Han looked at Gia. Think you can help the engineers decode it? Gia nodded. I will try. They moved to the engineering lab. The room was full of busy crew members working on shield calibrations and data recovery. The engineers were already trying to fix the memory crystal, but the device flickered and sparked whenever they touched it. Gia stepped forward. Let me try reading the signals manually, she said. The chief engineer nodded and handed her a pair of thin interface gloves. Gia placed her hands above the crystal and closed her eyes, focusing on the soft patterns inside it. Small lights flickered, blue, silver. Then a faint image started to form on the main screen. Han leaned forward. Shapes appeared. Dark ships, long and sharp, with edges that looked like blades. No lights, no markings. They moved like shadows. Then the image distorted, and the screen showed a weapon striking the alien envoy's ship. A long beam of dark energy cut through their shield, splitting it open with no resistance. The room fell silent. Those ships, Han whispered. They look like nothing we've ever seen. Gia kept working. More fragments appeared, quick flashes of the attackers boarding the envoy ship. Their forms were unclear, like the memory crystal struggled to capture them. But one thing was certain, they moved fast. Too fast. Gia stopped, breathing hard. The rest is corrupted, she said softly. Han nodded. This is enough to know they're dangerous. The crew worked for hours to decode more, but little else could be recovered. The ship remained quiet, drifting through space, trying not to attract attention. But tension filled every hallway. Han and Gia met again in the analysis room to review the signals. Gia sat at the main console while Han leaned over the back of her seat. There is something strange, she said. Look at this pattern. She tapped a section of the screen. A waveform appeared, pulsing slowly. This looks like noise, she said. But if you slow it down. She adjusted the speed. The pulse changed shape. It becomes a location marker. Han felt his heartbeat rise. A beacon? Yes, Gia said, her voice tightening. The attackers use these markers to find ships they damaged. It is like a trail. Han's eyes widened. Are you saying the alien envoy ship left a trail across the system? Yes, she confirmed. And we rescued them. So now the trail may lead straight to us. Han ran a hand through his hair. How long until they find us? I cannot be sure, Gia said. But their search pattern is fast. Maybe hours, Han left the room and headed straight to the bridge. Jia followed quickly. Raise shields, Han ordered. But keep energy output low. Prepare weapons. And scan for anything that moves. The crew jumped into action. Lights dimmed to combat mode. The quiet drifting of the ship felt heavier now, as if the darkness outside was holding its breath. Jia stood beside Han at the command table. I have an idea, she said. Han turned to her. What is it? She took a deep breath. We can disrupt the beacon trail. If we create false signals, the attackers may follow the wrong path. Han's eyes lit up. Can you do that? Yes, Jia said. It will be difficult, but possible. Han placed a hand on her shoulder without thinking. Do it, and be careful. Jia felt her face warm again at his touch, but she nodded quickly and hurried to a workstation. She began crafting false beacons. She used parts of the real signals, mixed with human-coded patterns, blending them until even an advanced enemy system might be fooled. She worked fast, faster than she ever had before. Her fingers moved like she was playing an invisible instrument. Han watched her from the command table. He admired her focus, her calm under pressure. He tried not to think about how she blushed every time he teased her, but the thought crept in anyway. Minutes later, Jia looked up. I finished. Han stepped beside her. Send them out. Jia transmitted the false beacons in multiple directions across the system. They scattered like small echoes, each one carrying a piece of the trail. The ship waited. Minutes passed. Then the sensors beeped. Captain! A crew member called out. Unknown ship signatures detected. Very faint, but approaching fast from starboard. Han's eyes narrowed. How many? 3. No, 4 ships. Fast, very fast. Ji-hei's breath caught. Did they detect us? The crew member stared at the screen. No, I don't think so. They're following one of the false signals. They're heading away from us. A wave of relief spread across the bridge. Han exhaled slowly. Good work, Jia. She nodded, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you. But the danger was not over. The enemy ships moved like blades through the darkness, scanning the area, looking for the envoy ship, searching for survivors. And Jia knew they would return once they realized they had been tricked. Hours later, when the ship returned to normal lighting and people finally began to breathe again, Han and Jia walked down a quiet hallway. You saved us, Han said. Your idea worked. Jia looked down shyly. It was only logic. Han shook his head. No, it was brave. And clever. She hesitated, then looked up at him. Captain, about before, when I teased you? He asked, smiling. Ji-hei's face flushed again. Yes, that? Han chuckled softly. You really react strongly, you know. Jia covered part of her face with her hand. Please do not mention it. Han leaned closer. Why not? Jia stepped back, heart racing. Because I don't know why it affects me. And now is not the time to think about it. Han's smile softened. All right. I won't push. But I won't pretend I didn't notice either. Jia looked away. Flustered. Han continued walking. And she followed. But neither of them noticed the faint blip appearing on the far sensor panel. Another beacon signal. Stronger than the others. One the enemy could not ignore. One that was growing closer. The faint new beacon on the sensors grew stronger with each passing minute. It pulsed in slow, steady waves, almost like a heartbeat in the dark. But the crew of the Aurora Lance quickly realized something terrible. This beacon was not one of Ji-hei's false signals. It was not something they had sent out. It was the real trail, the true signal left by the alien envoy ship during the attack. And unlike the faint ones earlier, this one was fresh. The enemy was close. Much closer than anyone had expected, Han stood on the bridge, staring at the rising signal. The air felt heavy around him. Every crew member watched in silence as the beacon grew brighter on the display. How far? Han asked. The sensor officer swallowed. Maybe 20 minutes until they reach our position. Han nodded, even though the news hit him like a punch. All crew, prepare for combat. Bring engines to low power. Keep shields ready, minimum output until the last second. Crew members moved fast, their steps echoing across the deck like distant thunder. Jia stepped beside Han, clutching her tablet. I am sorry, she whispered. I tried to hide the trail. I did not expect the real one to reactivate. Han turned to her. This isn't your fault. You saved us earlier, and we're still standing thanks to you. Jia looked down, her face warm with mixed emotions. I will try to help again. I know you will, Han said. Then, without thinking, he added softly, Sweetheart. Jia froze. Her cheeks turned red, but she forced herself to breathe and stay calm. Captain, please focus, she murmured. Han grinned for half a second. I am. But their moment ended when the ship shook. A violent tremor ran through the hull. Panels rattled. Lights flickered. Impact detected. The sensor officer shouted. Something exited warp right on top of us. Shields up now. Han ordered. The shield generators roared to life. Humming through the ship, 3 enemy ships appeared out of the darkness, like dark blades sliding from shadows. Their hulls were smooth and sharp, shaped like crescents. Not a single light showed on them, yet they moved with terrifying precision. Enemy vessels are locking weapons. A crew member shouted, Battle stations. Han yelled, Weapons online. Fire when ready. The Aurora Lance launched the first shots, bright streams of energy that cut through space. They struck the closest enemy ship, shaking it but not slowing it. The enemy returned fire. Dark beams tore across the shields, leaving streaks of static and fire. Jia fought to stay steady as the ship rocked again. Captain, their targeting signals are not normal. They shift frequencies very fast. It is hard to track. Try decoding them. Anything you can. I will, she said, moving to a nearby console. The enemy ships moved in close formation, faster than anything the Terran crew had seen before. They circled around like wolves around prey. The Aurora Lance fired again, this time hitting one of the ships hard enough to crack its hull. It spun to the side, silent and deadly, but still operational. We need to push them back. Han called out. Prepare maneuver Delta 7. The helmsman's hands flew across the controls. Ready? The ship jerked suddenly into a sharp spiral, flipping around into an unexpected angle. The enemy ships faltered for a moment, confused by the sudden movement. Han slammed his hand down. Fire! The Aurora Lance unleashed a powerful burst. The damaged enemy ship took the full hit. Its hull broke apart silently, the pieces drifting into space. One down. Someone shouted Jia, focused on the shifting targeting signals. She zoomed in on the frequencies, trying to separate them. Then she gasped. Captain, they are trying to disable our translation core. Han turned sharply. Why the translation core? Jihei's eyes widened. Because it holds the data from the alien envoy ship. They do not want us to understand their language or signals. If they destroy it, we will be blind. Han swore under his breath. Protect the core at all costs. A sudden blast shook the ship. Sparks flew from a ceiling panel. Direct hit. The engineer on the bridge shouted. They hit the lower decks. Power is dropping. Jia grabbed the console as the lights flickered. The translation core was located in the lower research chamber. If it lost power, it would overload and destroy all the recovered data. Captain, I need to go to the research chamber. Gia said. It's too dangerous, Han said at once. But if the core overloads, we lose everything. We lose the chance to understand them. We lose the chance to protect everyone. Han hesitated. The battle raged outside. The ship trembled under heavy fire, but Jie's eyes were steady. Go, he said finally. But take 2 guards with you. Jia nodded and ran for the lift. The corridors shook as she moved through them. Red emergency lights flashed along the walls. Crew members ran in all directions as they worked to repair systems and keep the ship alive. When Jia reached the research chamber, smoke filled the hallway. A small fire had broken out near a power conduit. The translation core was flashing bright red, a warning sign. She rushed inside. Her pulse raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. The core hummed loudly, overheating. She grabbed a toolkit from the wall and opened the emergency panel beneath the core. The guard stood by the door. Weapons ready. Jia crawled halfway under the core and began pulling wires apart, trying to reroute the remaining power. A loud explosion echoed through the chamber as another hit shook the ship. Jia? Hurry, one of the guards shouted. I am trying. She called back. Her hands moved quickly. She found the main power line and disconnected it just as the core reached critical heat. The lights above her flickered, then stabilized. The core stopped glowing red. Jia let out a shaky breath. It is stable. For now. But another explosion hit, stronger than before. The room shook. A beam fell from the ceiling. One of the guards grabbed Jia's arm and pulled her out of the way. We need to go, he said. Jia nodded, and they ran back toward the lift. Meanwhile, on the bridge, things were not improving. Shields at 23%. Engineering reports a coolant leak. Enemy ships are closing in. Han gripped the command rail so hard his knuckles turned white. Fire everything we have left, he ordered. The Aurora Lance fired again, almost emptying its reserves. One of the enemy ships spun away, heavily damaged, but the last ship moved in too close. Just then, the lift doors opened and Jia rushed out onto the bridge, breathing hard. Core is stable, she said. Han turned to her in relief. Thank you. You saved us. But the moment was cut short by a final alarm. Enemy ship is charging its main weapon. Han braced himself. Then Jia stepped closer to him and whispered, Captain, if we shift our shield frequency by 2 points, their weapon may not break through. Their energy beams weaken at that range. Han looked at her. How do you know that? I studied the pattern earlier, she said. Han wasted no time. Shift shield frequency. Now. The engineer adjusted the settings. The enemy ship fired. The dark beam hit the Aurora Lance head-on. The ship trembled but held, shields holding at 9%. Han slammed his fist forward. Fire! The Aurora Lance fired its final shot. The beam pierced the enemy ship straight through its middle. The ship cracked open and exploded in a burst of silver. Fragments. Silence filled the bridge. The enemy was gone. Han let out a long breath and turned to Jia. She was shaking slightly, but her eyes were bright. You saved the ship twice today, he said. Jia looked down shyly. I only did what was needed. Han stepped closer and whispered softly. You did more than that. Sweetheart. Jia flushed deeply, her face turning warm. Captain, she whispered. But before she could say more, the sensor alarm beeped again. Another signal. Not enemy. Something else. Something big. Han and Jia turned to the main screen. Far away in the dark, a new fleet was emerging. And nobody knew if it was friend or foe. The new fleet appeared like a sunrise made of metal. Dozens of ships came out of the dark, their engines glowing in soft blue waves. They were nothing like the enemy ships. They had round shapes, warm lights, and gentle curves across their hulls. They looked alive, almost like floating lanterns drifting through space. Han stared at the screen. Are they friend or foe? No answer came for several seconds. The bridge stayed silent except for the soft hum of weak shields and damaged engines. Jia leaned forward. Captain, I think these are the envoys people. Their support fleet. The alien leader in the medical bay recognized the ships too. He stood with help from the medic and whispered to the nurse. Within seconds, the message reached Han. Jia translated, he says these ships belong to their home alliance. They came because the envoys were missing. They tracked the last beacon signal. Han felt a wave of relief wash through him. He let out a long, tired breath. At least someone friendly finally showed up. But the relief did not last long. A soft alarm beeped. The sensor officer turned pale. Captain, the enemy is returning. We are reading 6 new signatures entering the outer system. Jia's hands tightened on her tablet. They must have realized the false signals were fake. Han nodded grimly. And they're coming to finish the job. The bridge fell into a thick silence. The envoy fleet moved gracefully until the lead ship stopped right in front of the Aurora Lance. A soft message came through musical. Gentle. Jia listened and translated. They are asking if we need help. They say they detected enemy movement and are ready to form a battle line with us. Han stood tall. Tell them yes. Tell them we fight together. Jia sent the response. Her voice was steady, but inside, her heart raced. She knew what was coming. The enemy had shown their strength in the first attack. 6 ships would be even more dangerous. Minutes later, the envoy fleet formed a defensive arc around the Aurora Lance. Their ships glowed like warm shields against the void. Han turned to his crew. Prepare the hybrid systems. Connect our targeting array to theirs. Jia, work with their communication officers. We need perfect timing. Jia nodded and worked fast, linking channels, translating signals, organizing frequency alignment. Her screen filled with lines of alien symbols and human letters blending together. For a brief moment, she forgot the fear. She forgot the battle scars across the ship. She focused only on the task connecting 2 worlds. The bridge lights dimmed again. Red lines spread across the main display, marking the enemy ships approaching at high speed. Han stood at the center of the bridge, calm but determined. Everyone ready? Crew members nodded. The envoy ships sent a soft pulse, a sign of unity that translated quietly. They say, we fight as one. May our lights join together. Han nodded. Let's show them how humans fight. The enemy arrived. 6 dark ships sliced into the system, moving like shadows pulled by invisible strings. They locked onto the envoy fleet instantly and fired their dark beams. The envoy ships raised shimmering shields that spread like ripples across a pond. The beams hit the shields, bending the light and creating waves of sparks. The Aurora Lance fired next. The first shots were clean, bright, and fast. They struck the enemy, slowing their advance. The enemy spread out, trying to flank the envoy. 2 ships moved toward the left side. 1 slipped toward the right. 3 came straight down the center. Han reacted instantly. Split the fleet. Half left, half right. Keep the center strong. The envoy ships moved like dancers, following the command perfectly. Jia kept translating rapid instructions. Her eyes darted across her screens. Captain, the left flank needs reinforcement. Enemy ships are pushing forward there. Redirect our forward cannons. Han ordered. The Aurora Lance turned sharply, firing a burst that forced the 2 flanking enemy ships to pull back. The battle continued like a storm. Bright lights flashed like lightning. Dark beams tore through the void like claws. Explosions echoed silently across the stars. Then something went wrong. A sudden blast struck the envoy's largest ship. Its shields cracked. Fire erupted from its hull. Gia gasped. "Captain, they are losing control." Han gritted his teeth. "Divert power to our support beacons. Send energy to their shields. We barely have any power left." The engineer shouted, "Give them what we can." Han snapped. The Aurora Lance's remaining energy flowed outward, creating a soft blue stream that wrapped around the envoy ship. Its shield steadied for a moment, but the enemy ships were relentless. Another blast shook the envoy ship, sending debris flying. Ga's heart pounded. "Captain, we need to disable their lead ship. The rest follow its commands." Han nodded. "Find its weak point." Gia scanned the data quickly. Her hands trembled as she worked. She found something. "Captain, their lead ship has a weakness at its lower engine arc. But the angle is dangerous. You must get close, too close." Han stared at her. "How close?" Gia swallowed. "Close enough that one wrong move will destroy us?" Han smiled slightly. "So a normal day, then." Gia stared at him, torn between fear and frustration. "Captain, please take this seriously." Han stepped closer to her. "I do, and I trust you. Guide me." Gia's cheeks turned warm, but she pushed the feeling away. This was not the time. Turn 30 degrees left. Drop shield frequency by 1 point. Slow speed. Then fire at the exact center of the arc. "Helm, do it," Han ordered. The Aurora Lance moved forward, drifting dangerously close to the enemy lead ship. Its dark hull pulsed with cold energy. "Closer." Gia whispered. The enemy ship charged its main weapon. "Closer." The screens flashed bright red. "Now." Gia shouted. Han fired. The beam struck the lower engine arc at the perfect angle. The enemy ship convulsed, its dark energy flickering uncontrollably. Then it exploded, sending a shockwave across the system. The other enemy ships froze. Confused without commands, the envoy fleet seized the moment. They fired together, their lights merging into one brilliant line. The remaining enemy ships were destroyed in seconds. The battle ended. Silence fell again. The envoy fleet slowly dimmed their lights. Signaling peace. Han turned to Gia. She stood shaking, breathless, her hands still gripping her tablet. "You did it," Han said softly. "You guided us straight into victory." Gia lowered her head shyly. "You trusted me. I only helped." Han stepped closer and touched her shoulder gently. "You saved hundreds of lives." Jia's cheeks warmed. She felt her heart race. Then the ship shook suddenly, not from attack, this time from inside. A power conduit failed. Sparks burst from the wall near Han. Without thinking, Gia grabbed Han's arm and pulled him away. The sparks exploded where he had stood. Han looked at her in surprise. "You saved me again." Jia's face was red. I just reacted." Han smiled gently. "Thank you, sweetheart." Jia's breath caught. Her face turned bright pink. "Captain," she whispered. But for once, she didn't ask him to stop. The envoy fleet sent a final message. Jia translated quietly. "They say they want to form an alliance. Humans impressed them. They want to build a future together." Han smiled. "Then we accept. Together we stand stronger." Jia looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, the word sweetheart echoed in her chest like a warm spark she couldn't deny. Han walked slowly through the quiet hallway of the Aurora Lance. The battle was over at last. The scars on the ship were clear. Some metal plates were burned. Some walls were cracked. The lights flickered in a few places. But the ship was still standing, and so were the people inside. He felt tired, but he also felt something warm in his chest. The fighting had been heavy. The danger had been real. But they had won. Humans and the alien allies had fought together. They had protected each other. They had used both courage and clever ideas. And in the end, they had survived. Han reached the observation room, where the large window looked out into open space. A soft glow from distant stars filled the room. He stood there for a moment. The silence felt peaceful. He could finally breathe. He heard soft footsteps behind him. He did not need to turn to know who it was. Gia stopped beside him, her hands folded in front of her. She wore a simple repair suit. It was marked with dust, scratches, and a little dried coolant from her work during the last crisis. Her hair was tied back loosely, but a few strands had fallen around her cheeks. Her eyes looked tired but bright. She gave him a small smile. "You found the quiet place again," she said. Han nodded. "Just needed a moment." Gia moved a little closer, looking at the starfield. "It feels strange," she said softly. "Everything was loud just a few hours ago. Now it feels like the universe is sleeping." Han laughed gently. "Maybe it's giving us a break." Gia breathed out and let her shoulders relax. They stood together without talking for a while. The silence between them felt comfortable. After a minute, Han turned to her. "How's the translation corps? You saved it again." She looked embarrassed and waved her hand. "It was not just me. Many people helped." "Maybe," Han said. "But you were the one who crawled under fire and pulled the cables by hand." Gia blushed a little and looked down. "I only did what needed to be done." Han smiled. "You always do." She hesitated, then looked at him more directly. "And you always risk your life for everyone. That maneuver you did, that was—" She could not find the right word. "Reckless?" Han offered. She shook her head. "Brave." Han did not reply, but she could see the small smile he tried to hide. Another long silence followed. It was warm this time, not heavy. Then Gia spoke again, quiet and unsure. "Han, earlier, when things were falling apart, when the corridor exploded and you reached for me, you said something." He looked at her, remembering the moment clearly. They had been surrounded by smoke and alarms. He had grabbed her arm and pulled her to safety. And he had whispered one word to her. "Sweetheart." He waited for her to continue. A look down at her hands. Her voice was soft. "You said that word again. And I reacted again." Han tried not to smile. "You did?" She took a breath, trying to stay calm. Her cheeks warmed. "I do not know why I react like that. It just happens. You don't like it?" Han asked gently. Gia looked up fast. "No, I mean, I do not dislike it. It is just—" She looked away again. "Confusing." Han watched her. Her embarrassment, her honesty, the way she struggled to describe her feelings. It was all strangely endearing. He had seen her work with perfect focus during battles. He had seen her stand firm while everyone else panicked. But here, in this quiet moment, she looked softer. He stepped a little closer. "Gia," he said softly, "you don't have to explain anything." Her lips parted slightly. "But He shook his head. "It's okay." For a moment, she simply stood there. The reflection of the stars shone in her eyes. She lightly gripped the edge of her sleeve, nervous. Finally, she whispered, "Han, can you say it again?" He blinked, surprised. "Now?" Gia nodded. "Yes, just once more." He stepped even closer, so she could hear him clearly. His voice was warm and gentle. "Sweetheart." Gia's cheeks turned pink almost instantly. She looked down, then up, then down again. Her fingers pressed together nervously. Her voice shook just slightly when she replied, "Again." Han smiled faintly. "Sweetheart." This time she closed her eyes, as if the word touched something deep inside her. She breathed slowly, letting the sound settle in her heart. "You really like that word, don't you?" Han teased. Jia covered part of her face with her hand. "It is not the word," she said quietly. "It is. Who is saying it?" Han felt something warm spread through him. The way she said it, so simple, so honest, hit him harder than any battle. She met his eyes again. This time, she did not look away. Han reached out slowly and held her hand. She let him. Outside the window, the stars moved gently, like distant lanterns floating in the dark. Jia's voice came softly. "The alliance ceremony is tomorrow. The aliens want to thank you. They said humans are brave, fierce, and unpredictable." Han laughed. "Unpredictable sounds right." Jia nodded. "They also said humans are strange because they can fight hard but still care deeply about others." She paused. "I think that is true." He squeezed her hand lightly. "You think humans are strange?" "Only you," she replied. Han grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment." Jia looked at the stars again. "I do not know what happens next, but I want to stay on this ship. I want to keep learning. And I want to stay near you." Han felt his heartbeat quicken. "I want that too." They stood there, hands together, sharing the quiet. Outside, the galaxy stretched out before them, vast, dangerous, beautiful. But for now, in that small room on a scarred ship, everything felt warm and peaceful. Jia leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. "Say it again," she whispered. Han smiled softly. He bent his head toward her. "Sweetheart,